If you're in learning and development, you already know. It's a world with its own language, right? You've got andragogy, summative assessments, learning journeys. It can feel like a lot to keep straight. Well, that's exactly why we're here today. We are going to decode the language of L&D. We're breaking down 30 of the most essential terms so you can speak the language fluently and drive some real impact. Because let's be honest, that's the million-dollar question. How do we create something that's more than just a box-ticking exercise? Something that actually moves the needle on performance and delivers real results for the business? So how do we get there? Well, it starts by speaking the language. Okay, here they are, the big 30. And I know seeing them all together like this can look a little intimidating, but don't worry, we're not just going to read a glossary. We're going to walk through these terms in a way that makes sense, following the natural life cycle of an L&D project. You'll see how each concept logically flows into the next, from that first spark of an idea all the way to measuring the bottom line impact. So, first things first, you have to lay a strong foundation. Before you ever dream of building a course or a workshop, you have to know why you're building it. This is all about strategy. It's about diagnosing the real problem before you even think about coming up with a solution. And it all kicks off with a needs analysis. Honestly, think of yourself as a doctor here. You would never want a doctor to just hand you a prescription without figuring out what's wrong first, right? Of course not. A needs analysis is that diagnostic work. It's how we find out what the actual issue is, who's affected by it, and, this is key, whether training is even the right fix in the first place. And that analysis gives us two incredibly important things. On one side, we pinpoint the performance gap. That's just the space between where the team is right now and where the business needs them to be. And then that gap directly tells us what our learning objectives need to be. These aren't just fluffy wishes. They are super specific, measurable goals that become the North Star for the entire project. Okay, so we know our why, we've done the analysis, and we have a destination in mind. So what's next? Well, we need a map to get there. And that brings us to the blueprint phase. This is all about design and frameworks, where we start to architect the how of it all. And the master discipline for this whole phase is instructional design. Now, this isn't about picking nice fonts and colors. It is a structured, systematic process for engineering a learning experience that leads to a real, measurable change in how people do their jobs. And one of the most classic roadmaps for instructional designers is the ADDIE model. It's an acronym: Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. It's this tried and true cyclical framework that just works. It makes sure you're hitting all the key stages in a really logical order. So if ADDIE is the process we follow, then andragogy gives us the principles we need to keep in mind. And this is so important. We're not teaching kids here, we're helping adults learn. And adults are a different breed of learner. They need autonomy, they want their experience to be valued, and most of all, they need to see how what they're learning applies directly to the challenges they face every single day. Now, while you're in that design phase, you're going to be working with a few key building blocks. You'll likely use a competency model to define what great actually looks like for a specific role. You'll use authoring tools, software like Articulate or Captivate, to build the actual learning materials. You'll team up with a subject matter expert, or SME, the person who has all that critical knowledge. And you'll lean on evidence-based learning to make sure your design choices are grounded in science, not just what you think might work. All right, our blueprint is solid. Now our focus shifts to, frankly, the most important person in this whole equation, the learner. How do we go from just pushing content at them to actually creating an experience that's engaging, memorable, and, maybe even a little bit fun? This brings us to a huge concept, the learning experience, or LX. This is the holistic view. It's not just about what information you give them, it's about how they feel, how they interact with the material, the whole emotional and cognitive journey they're on. Great LX is what makes training stick. So how do we build that experience? Well, think about planning a big hike. The entire trail from the starting point all the way to that mountain summit, that's the learning journey. It's the big picture, strategic path you're taking them on. And the individual steps you take along that path, that's your micro-learning. These are short, bite-sized, super focused nuggets of learning that are easy to digest and fit right into a busy schedule. And today, we have an amazing toolkit to make that journey really engaging. We can use a blended learning approach, mixing online modules with live sessions. We can bring in gamification, using things like points and leaderboards to dial up the motivation. We can design an individual learning path that adapts to what each person needs, or we can use situational learning to give them help right when they need it, in the flow of their actual work. But wait, how do you know which of those cool strategies to pick? That's where the learner persona comes in. This is basically a detailed, semi-fictional profile of your target learner, but it's based on real data. When you really understand their goals, their frustrations, their day-to-day reality, you can design something that truly speaks to them, not to some generic, faceless employee. So we've designed this amazing, engaging experience. We've delivered it, but did it actually work? This brings us to the final and, you could argue, the most important stage of all, measuring our impact and proving our value back to the business. So when do we measure? Well, there are two key moments. Think of formative assessment as a quick check-in during the learning. It's like a pop quiz or a practice activity just to make sure everyone's on the right track. Then you have this summative assessment. That's the final exam. It happens after the training is over, and it tells you if you actually hit those learning objectives you set way back at the beginning. But to measure effectiveness in a really meaningful way, the industry standard is the Kirkpatrick model. It gives us 4 levels. Level 1 is reaction, basically the happy sheet. Did they like it? Level 2 is learning. Did they actually absorb the information? Now, level 3, behavior, is where it gets really interesting. Are they actually doing things differently on the job? And finally, level 4 is results. Did their new behavior lead to a real business outcome, like more sales or fewer mistakes? Each level gets harder to measure, but boy, is it a whole lot more valuable. And the engine that drives all of this measurement, that's learning analytics. This is where we get into the data. We're collecting, analyzing, and interpreting all the information from our programs, from who completed what, to how they scored, to find patterns, prove our impact, and frankly, to make much smarter decisions the next time around. And all of this work leads us to the holy grail of L&D measurement, ROI, return on investment. This is where we connect all the dots and show the business that for every dollar they invested in our training program, they got a specific, tangible amount of value back. This is how L&D proves it's not a cost center, but a value driver. So there you have it. We've literally walked through the entire process, right? From figuring out the problem with a needs analysis, all the way to proving our value with ROI. See, these aren't just buzzwords. This is the professional language we use to build learning that creates real, measurable impact. So you have the vocabulary now. You speak the language. The only question left is, what are you going to do with it? Think about that next project on your plate. Are you going to dig a little deeper on your needs analysis? Maybe build out a really detailed learner persona? Or is this the year you finally go from measuring level 4 results? You've got the tools, now go make something unforgettable.